Because some of our panelists have other commitments, so we would need to start on time for the second session. So I will sacrifice myself temporarily and only present my short presentation maybe after the panel of the second session, which was in fact to link a little bit this concept of nature-based solution as explained also and mentioned by Neno in one of his slides to this concept of conjunctive water management. We noticed also there was a question regarding the aspect of financing conjunctive water management by Mr. Joel Tosu in the chat box. Maybe this aspect of financing will be indeed very relevant, especially at the transboundary level. In fact, the transboundary level dimension are the layers of complexity, but we planned to address this topic in the next session. And Neno indeed will be part of the panel, so maybe he can also expand on this aspect. Just maybe giving last opportunity to Jack if you wish to give some elements on this question of financing or final words before starting the session at transboundary level. Please, Jack, do you have any contribution regarding this aspect or any concluding remarks?
Yes, I think this is a very useful comment. I agreed completely with the fact that financing is very essential, and in particular financing for interventions in the field which are requiring a lot of money, like these large recharge dams, but also the financing is also needed for all people who have a task in bringing this conjunctive water management to the forward. So thanks for the comment. This is it is also one of the priorities shown in the brochure, that financing is important. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jack, for your presentation and this contribution. And so, as I said, I think we can now start the second session of this online event, which is dedicated to the transboundary level, with the title of From Mainstreaming to Taking Actions, and with the objective of discussing opportunities for conjunctive water management techniques and tools in transboundary context, highlighting in particular the multiple values this can generate and at the benefits of riparian countries. I'm sure that we will hear a lot of examples and suggestions to mainstream this concept of conjunctive water management in the specific context of transboundary level cooperation and coordination. And to start with, we will have a panel as planned in the agenda of this session, but there will be a slight modification in the order of the presentation, and I would like to invite first Mr. James Suramba, the Executive Director of the SADC Groundwater Management Institute, to present first, because he has some other commitments, and so it's good that he could be with us and have the opportunity to share his experience now. So without waiting more, I please, James, can you the floor is yours, and we are listening to you.
Thank you very much, Ren. I will do my presentation. It's quite a quick presentation. I'll share my screen from here. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, in the panel and in this specific event. So my presentation will focus specifically on our experiences in the SADC region to promote conjunctive water management. I believe I'm sharing my screen. I'm trying to, right, okay. So what I'll do is I'll speak to this specific slide, our model for conjunctive water management in the SADC region. It comes from an institutional perspective. It also comes through the technical aspects. So I handle it. I'm sorry you will hear a bit of interruptions from the PA system. I'm in the airport. I'm sorry about that. But I hope you will hear me in the end. So I was saying my presentation will focus on three specific areas. One is the coordination aspect. The second one is the stewardship of conjunctive water management. And the third one is on knowledge. So in the SADC region, we've got the SADC Groundwater Management Institute, which is a center of excellence for groundwater management. And our model of managing conjunctive water resource management is in two legs. The first one is to build the capacity of the institutions, especially the river basin organizations, and integrate groundwater into river basin organizations. And the second leg relates to national capacity building to facilitate the integration of groundwater into river basin organizations. And we do this through what we call national focal groups, which are interest groups of stakeholders that reside in each of the 16 SADC member states to promote the use of groundwater and surface water. So we build capacity of the national level institutions, stakeholders through trainings. We also do that through the building of the policy, legal, and institutional analysis. So we did a gap analysis for all the 16 SADC member states to identify where the gaps are in terms of ensuring that groundwater is treated in an integrated way with surface water as well. So with those gap analysis, we came up with roadmaps that entail closing the gaps that we observed in the treatment of surface water as a superior resource to groundwater. Then we feed this specific policy, legal, and institutional alignment into the work of the river basin organizations through their planning and to build their capacity through the establishment of what we call groundwater committees. So we have 5 so far in the 5 major river basin organizations of LIMCOM, OCACOM, CUVECOM, ZAMCOM, and ORASECOM, where we support them through a 4-pronged approach. One of them is we have MOUs which specify the framework for support. And then the second leg is to facilitate the operations of the groundwater committees to feed into their technical committees. So this is an institutional arm that we use. And then thirdly, we do specific trainings to the river basin organization partners so that they integrate groundwater into their activities. And then fourthly, we also do technical assistance on specific technical issues, such as developing strategies for groundwater development in the river basin organization. And we also do groundwater assessments, as well as to conceptualize specific interventions that seek to manage jointly groundwater and surface water. With this, it so happens that virtually all the transboundary aquifers in the SADC region, 27 or 30 of them, fall into river basin organizations. So we are working to align the work of all the TBAs into specific, or to anchor or to nest the work of all the TBAs into the river basin organization. So that's our strategy, which tries to support that they don't treat surface water as separate from groundwater. And we are actually really doing very well in that regard. And through the policy, legal, and institutional frameworks, we are also developing mechanisms for data collection and management. And we have got specific platforms at the moment called the GIP, that is the SADC Groundwater Information Portal, that we worked over the past 3-4 years with IGRAC to develop and to populate this specific portal, which has got up to 30 links to other databases or map layers that support the conjunctive use of groundwater. So without information, of course, you cannot make decisions and you cannot manage the resource conjunctively. So we are using this data, and eventually our vision is that we provide this data into decision support systems for conjunctive water resource management. We are also developing a groundwater literature archive, which is more or less all the information and data that you can find and reports that you can find in the region into a web portal where our idea is that all the data, all the reports and information you can find in the region in regard to groundwater is found in a one-stop shop. We also do research in different perspectives through transboundary diagnostic analysis. We also do joint strategic action plans, which are all aimed at making sure that groundwater is treated as an integrated resource conjunctively with surface water. So that's how we are managing on the knowledge side of things. And then on the stewardship side, we ensure that the river basin organizations have got a common vision for the stewardship of both surface and groundwater. And then from a regional institutional perspective as well, we look at the coordination aspect, where SADC GMI is a subsidiary of SADC, and it reports to the subcommittee on hydrogeology, which is a subcommittee of the Water Resources Technical Committee, comprising of the directors of water in all the SADC member states, which are 16 of them. And then they report to the water ministers and eventually to the SADC Council of Ministers. So this is a framework of how within the SADC region, we are trying to support the conjunctive use of groundwater and surface water. As you know, most of the SADC region, we have quite a substantial percentage of about 70% of our population relying on groundwater, especially in some cases as the only resource. And as climate change intensifies, the impacts of that climate change are pushing people more and more into the utilization of groundwater for survival, because it is obviously a more resilient resource to surface water in the face of climate change. Let me just quickly then give you a quick model of how we are working within our SADC region to support the integration of groundwater into river basin organizations and our institutional model at large. We use the 3 I's, which is the information, infrastructure, and institutions. On institutions, we support the national focal groups that I mentioned, the river basin organizations, and we build the skills of young professionals and the member states professionals, including the private sector as well. And we are also developing capacity building tools through guidelines of a different nature, including guidelines on how to close gaps in the policy, legal, and institutional framework, how to undertake assembling, how to do data collection management, and so forth. And then the second leg is information, of course, which starts with information, with the data. As I highlighted, we do research and we do knowledge management of those results. And then finally, we look at infrastructure. How do we support the livelihoods for sustainable conjunctive use of surface and groundwater? And we support the implementation of pilot projects that support community gardens, for instance, monitoring networks, and such other infrastructure to support the sustainable access of the said resource. So in a very quick rundown, that's our model as SADC GMI in the SADC region to support the conjunctive utilization of groundwater and surface water for sustainable development, and of course, to build resilience, especially in the wake of climate change. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James, for having joined us today and sharing this very relevant experience, and in fact, this little change in the order of the presentation was somehow good, because it allowed to a little bit set the stage of what can be done in the context of transboundary cooperation, transboundary water management, and especially, as you highlighted, intervention both at the field level and also some institutional challenges in the Groundwater Commission that were established in particular. So I think that was a good opportunity to as an introduction to the next item we have in on the agenda, which is a panel. So I will introduce the speakers just before each one takes the floor. And our first speaker will be Mr. Mohamed Baza. He is a former senior officer at FAO. He was particularly in charge of the coordination of the groundwater governance project a few years ago, and now he is also involved in several projects with UNESCO and groundwater and conjunctive management, especially as the current project that is supporting the African Network of Basin Organization, ANBO, on mainstreaming this concept of conjunctive management and improving the integration of groundwater into river basins organization. So Mohamed, the floor is yours, so that you can give us some reflection about your experience, in particular in both project groundwater governance and current ANBO project. Thank you for.
I need someone to take up. The last speaker can take off his. Can stop sharing the. Okay.
Okay, so you have a presentation also, Mohamed?
Yes, I'm trying to find it.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see it now? Excuse me, can you see it?
Yes, but you should put it in full screen, in presentation mode. Yes, now it's okay. Thank you, Mohamed.
Thank you very much, Aurelia. I'm given, and good evening, everybody. I was given 5 to 10 minutes to talk about conjunctive water management considerations in the Global Groundwater Governance Initiative, and also in one of the applications of the framework for action that came out of this initiative. So it's a lot of text in just 5 minutes, but probably most of you have heard of the groundwater governance or Global Groundwater Governance Project implemented between 2011 and 2016 by UNESCO, IHP, FAO, the World Bank, the International Association of Hydrogeologists, and GEF, which worked for 5 years, involved all countries of all subregions of the world, and working with over 100 countries, with more than 1,000 experts, decision makers, managers, and so on of groundwater involved in it. I will not go beyond that. But the key finding from this project was that effective groundwater management hinges on good groundwater governance. You really need good groundwater governance in order to manage groundwater very well. And in fact, the project demonstrated that really the main issues of groundwater governance dimension. And also the project found that the groundwater governance was weak almost everywhere in the world, of course with varying differences. And the output of the project was, very briefly, one of the good outputs is a very good, very integrated and comprehensive conceptualization of groundwater governance, probably for the very first time in the sense that it is most integrated and comprehensive, and also it distinguishes groundwater governance from groundwater management, which up till then were more or less being used interchangeably with different issues related to that. And the last output is an adaptable, structured process for enhancing groundwater governance locally. It's a process that is very well structured and which is adaptable to any given situation locally at the level of, let's say, specifically aquifers, being national aquifers or shared or what have you. Now, what is the relationship between conjunctive water management and groundwater governance? Well, you find it everywhere. And I think Jack van der Gaan, who was one of the essential experts working on that initiative that I just mentioned, has just presented the conjunctive water management, what he called the provisions, provisions of conjunctive water management. Now, what I put here is the 4 provisions of good or effective groundwater governance, which are actors and institutions, legal and regulatory framework, knowledge, information and awareness, and policies, plans, and finances. And I put the relationship or the desired relationship or how the links between conjunctive water management and those provisions. And you see they are actually in 4 levels. I captured these from the project materials, but they are very well illustrated in the presentation by Jack van der Gaan. In terms of actors and their institutions, you really have the groundwater and surface water interface is very important in terms of institutions. And normally you should have just a unique institution for both, or in the case where, which is a bit difficult, in the case where you have different institutions dealing with surface and groundwater, then good coordination and in planning and in management is extremely important. With respect to legal and regulatory framework, again, you really have to have legal considerations of conjunctive water management somehow captured in the legal framework, specifically with respect to pollution control, with respect to, let's say, management mechanisms, such as integrated water resource management and so on. With respect to water ownership itself, groundwater ownership or what have you. So you have a lot of legal considerations that are important or important to I mean, there are many considerations related to conjunctive water management that need to be captured in the legal framework of countries, or it's advised that they be captured. With respect to information, knowledge and awareness and so on, well, it's really, it's extremely important. And this has also been mentioned with respect to, without conjunctive water management, there is no way that you know the resources very well. And the risk of confusion and overestimation of the amount of water to start with, just how much water a country has, is very likely to be overestimated if the relationship between surface water and groundwater is not very well captured. And it's also very important to be, for awareness reasons, to be there. Finally, with respect to policies and plans, it's also very essential. Conjunctive water management is very much influenced by policies, and at the same time, its success hinges on to what type of policies you are having. With respect to for instance, finance, in fact, there was a question just a while ago with respect to finance, but not only finances, even macro policies at country level might influence the relationship between groundwater and surface water and so on. So you really have conjunctive water management linked directly or indirectly to all provisions of good governance, which means, in simple terms, that you cannot have a very good groundwater governance at country level or aquifer level or whatever without conjunctive water management. That's the key point. At the same time, in addition to provisions, conjunctive water management is one of the 5 guiding principles of groundwater governance. It is by itself, conjunctive management being one of the guiding principles directly as it stands. And it's also linked to other guiding principles with respect to co-management of groundwater and land use, co-management of groundwater and subsurface space, co-management of water quality and quantity. So it is really there everywhere. And finally, the groundwater management plans that you develop based on the framework that I just talked about was essentially that came out of the project. After a lot of work, you come up with a groundwater management plan to enhance the management of, or to facilitate the management of the aquifer. Then the actions automatically incorporate conjunctive water management. And we have talked about, we have seen from Jack and the colleague who presented last and so on, the different actions that are potentially or that really have to be included in the groundwater management aquifer management plan in order for that plan to be successful. That's as far as the output. We can go later in the questions because I suppose I'm already beyond the 5 questions. With respect to GEF IW project, this is a project that started 2018 and was due to be finished this year, but was extended to 2021 because of the COVID crisis. It is a project financed by GEF, of course, implemented by UNDP, and executed jointly by UNESCO, IGRAC on one hand, and the Organisme de Bassin Versant du Sénégal, OMVS. And the objective of this project is really strengthening institutional capacity of African network of basin organizations on transboundary water governance. And the component that UNESCO and IGRAC are intervening in is limited to groundwater. Our role is just strengthening the capacity of lake river basin organizations and partners, including the AMCO, the African Council of Ministers of Water, regional economic commissions in Africa. So strengthening their capacity on the integration of transboundary groundwater and fostering groundwater governance, of course, in lake and river basin planning. So it's like lake and river basins today are essentially planning at the river basin just surface water. And we would like to have groundwater captured in there. So the core of the project actually is on conjunctive water management. We are promoting conjunctive water management, the integration of groundwater with surface water. And the focus is on transboundary groundwater governance in general, law and cooperation agreements. So as I indicated, this project is about capacity strengthening. So it's all in the upstream work rather than work in the field per se. And in fact, in that respect, a 14-hour online training course, actually the first two hours were held the 6th of October, and 14 hours will be held, will be online, start online as of 9th of November. Will be on this aspect. It's a training module, of course, of 14 hours, as I said, in addition to the 2 that I mentioned. On the groundwater governance law, whether national laws and international laws and their interaction with international law, but also on international law itself and cooperation agreement. And the second component is with the aquifer knowledge, information, and data management. This has been mentioned also by my predecessors as being the basis for managing, for governance, and also for managing whether national aquifers or transboundary aquifers. So this is very much about establishing a website on specifically dedicated to groundwater, training members of river basin organizations to collect data and exchange it and share it and enter it into the website and to interact between them and so on. And the final point is networking of groundwater specialists to serve as an entity for promoting groundwater integration into river basin and organizations, and also in building capacity. And of course, we are working at the transboundary aquifer level, which adds the difficulties in terms of agreements, in terms of conditions, let's say, for governance transboundary, in addition to what happens at the national level. For instance, you really need to have a good basis of water and groundwater governance at the national level before you have a very good, let's say, cooperation at the transboundary level. The same thing for water laws. National water laws have to be, let's say, have to cater for cooperation and have to be adapted to cooperation and so on. So we're working on both levels, national and let's say the objective is to improve transboundary aquifer governance and management, but the work really being done concerns countries as well. I will stop there and then we can go to more details in questions as we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. I think, yes, one of the lessons of your presentation is that, in fact, we can not go to sustainable groundwater management without considering also the integration of surface water and promoting this conjunctive water management approach. And you mentioned also the aspect regarding international water law and the interplay between the national and transboundary level, of course, in between national institution and transboundary level institution in terms of rules and law, and maybe this will be an aspect that will be more developed by our coming panelist, who is Raya Stefan. She's international water law expert, and who has helped UNESCO in many of in the past few years in many of the projects regarding transboundary groundwaters and transboundary aquifers management, especially regarding, for instance, the development linked to the draft articles on transboundary aquifers by the and the related UN General Assembly declaration. So, well, just to give an example of activities, Raya is also deputy editor-in-chief of Water International, and without more details, now I invite you, Raya, please, to give your intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurélien, for the introduction. I didn't prepare slides since you said this will be a panel discussion. So just to, we are talking about the management at the transboundary level. So in international law, we have three instruments dealing with the transboundary waters. The first two are two conventions. The UN Convention on the Law of International Water Courses and their use for non-navigational uses. And then the second one is the UNECE Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Water Courses and International Lakes. And we have another instrument which you mentioned, it's the draft articles on the law of transboundary aquifers. So these three instruments are, let's say, codify the basic principles of international water law, but they have a difference in their scope. Of course, the two UN conventions are binding for the states who are parties, while the draft articles so far are still like guiding instruments because they are part of 5 resolutions from the UN General Assembly, who has recommended their implementations by the states when they enter into an agreement for their transboundary aquifer. So the UN Convention on the Law of Non-Navigational Uses of International Water Courses covers water courses and groundwater when they are related to a surface water body, and when the surface water body and the groundwater share the same common terminus. So this has left out of the scope of the convention a vast majority of aquifers, those who are not linked at all to any surface water body, and those who not, even if they are linked to a river or a lake, they probably do not share the same terminus. The UNESCO Water Convention, who was originally intended only for the member states of the UN European Commission for Europe, is now a global convention. So every state member of the United Nations can be part of the convention. This convention covers all transboundary waters. So it covers groundwaters, surface water, without any distinction if it's linked or not linked to if they are linked or not linked together. And finally, the draft articles were prepared to complement the gap filled by the UN Convention on the Law of Non-Navigational Uses. So they cover all transboundary aquifers without any distinction, meaning that they can cover a transboundary aquifers which do not have any relation to any surface water body, but they also apply to the aquifers that are related to surface water bodies. And these draft articles have codified the principles of international water law with a special focus on transboundary aquifers, and they have also include provisions very specific to the characteristics of aquifers, contrary to the two other conventions that perhaps were drafted with having only surface water in mind. And by the way, the draft articles served to prepare under the UNESCO Water Convention the model provisions for transboundary groundwaters. These model provisions are intended to help the states member of the convention, party to the convention, to apply the convention to their transboundary groundwaters. Now, even if the draft articles were intended to cover the characteristics of transboundary aquifers and to help for their joint management, they nevertheless do not consider aquifers out of their, let's say, natural formation, geological formation, etc. Meaning that, for example, one of the factors of the equitable and reasonable use is the consideration of the natural characteristic of an aquifer. So if an aquifer is related to a surface water body, then the whole system composed of the surface water body and the aquifer have to be considered. Another example, also among the factors of the equitable and reasonable use within the draft articles, is the consideration of the related ecosystems. And there is also another provision in the draft articles about the ecosystems. So this provision is intended to protect the ecosystem that are dependent on the groundwater system. We often know that some wetlands or other are dependent on the groundwater under it, and we've seen that oases in the deserts have disappeared because overpumping of groundwater. This shows the close link of these two bodies. So under the draft articles, there is a specific consideration of this close relationship between groundwater and the ecosystems. Under the obligation not to cause significant harm, as it is also drafted in the draft articles, there is no explicit mention of surface water body, but the states, when using a transboundary aquifer, do have to consider not to cause any harm to the other states. So if, for example, like I just mentioned, that overpumping can reduce the flow of a river or of a wetland, then this is indirectly causing a harm to the other states. So the aquifer has to be managed in consideration of these factors. Yes, and I mentioned the ecosystem. Also, there is a consideration in the draft articles about the recharge and discharge. So these two functions of the aquifers have to be protected, and they also have to be protected even if these take place in the other state, not necessarily in the states of the aquifer. This is all what I had to say now, and I'll be happy to answer any question that will come further on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raya. And I think this is quite impressive to see how this draft article were quite innovative also, even though in the title they focus on the collaboration in aquifers. All the elements that you summarize now show that, yes, as I said, it was quite really advanced for that time, innovative to consider all this interaction of groundwater with surface water body, ecosystem, wetlands, and so on. And certainly, this can constitute a framework and a guide to develop some provisions and rules regarding this aspect in existing agreement and further agreement. Well, you may detail this aspect, how riparian states can use this draft article maybe in your next intervention. Okay, so next speaker will be Mr. Neno Kukurik, who has been introduced before already. So I'll leave you start with your consideration on this aspect of integrating conjunctive water management in the transboundary context. Please, Neno.
Thank you, Aurélien, and I will keep it short to have more time for discussion. And I also ask your colleague to put online PowerPoint, just 2 slides to have as a background. So if you can do that, if not, I will just give my, yeah, it's coming. Great. And can you just well, yes, and you can put it in a not in presenter view, but anyway, doesn't matter. So first slide is actually you see a spring, and you see a border, and you see an aquifer. So then you can say, well, you know, is this conjunctive management? Because in one country we have only aquifer, in the other country we have only river, you know, and but it's a very much conjunctive management. And I was asked to say a few words about requirements and incentives. Well, requirements. First, is there a need for collaboration? When we talk about rivers, it's relatively easy because you know you can see the things, and usually one of the countries, downstream countries, says yes, we need collaboration for this and that reason, and so the countries collaborate when it comes to surface water, about navigation, irrigation, energy production, etc. But when it comes to transboundary groundwaters, it's more complex because firstly, we need to see whether groundwater development and groundwater interventions have transboundary impact. And so in the last 20 years, a lot has been done on delineation and description of transboundary aquifers. But on this aspect of really, is there impact on transboundary impact of groundwater development? Not so much. And we need to do more about that to clearly show if you do this in your aquifer, then it will have implication to the other countries. So that will be incentive to do a monitoring and to do assessment of transboundary aquifers. And both of them are much more complex when it comes to surface water, because groundwater is invisible. And so the other reason for complexity when it comes to transboundary aquifers is related to a question which we already got in our Q&A, and that's the fact that river basins often do not align with the aquifer delineation, especially when it comes to a deeper aquifer or in a complex hydrogeological environment like this one I showed you on the first slide. Then when we have, for instance, karst as a hydrogeological environment, and then it's really complicated. The other requirements is well, the other obstacle is sensitivity. Of course, countries are sensitive when it comes to shared resource, and especially if it is invisible. If it is visible, if it is river, your neighbor will see if you are building dam from the satellite. But if it is groundwater, the repercussions can be visible after several years, and then it's often too late. And when we talk about repercussions, it can be quantity, but also quality. And you see that countries are hesitant to share even nationally data on groundwater quality, and certainly internationally it's more difficult. Further, there is obviously lack of a mandate and capacity to push for conjunctive water management within transboundary content. And if there are mechanisms, they are often surface water based. And recent analysis show that from about 250 treaties, right? I was talking about legal instruments. So there are about 250 international treaties, but 80% of them are exclusively about surface water, and only 2% really dedicated to groundwater. Among remaining, there are only 8 of them which give a substantial focus to both surface and groundwater. So to round off, what is actually needed? Firstly, needed is willingness of local and national governments, and to give them incentive that this is needed not only as a reliable source of drinking water, but also for droughts buffers, for flood mitigation, for irrigation expansion, hydropower, ecosystems, name it, economic growth, of course. What is very much needed is scientific evidence on necessity of this intervention. So assessment, monitoring, and related guidelines. And that's the reason, if you can would switch to the other slide. That's actually a reason that we need a good guidelines to assist in assessment and monitoring, especially inclusion of groundwater in a river basin management. Could you switch to second slide, please? And thank you. So you will see here one of the training manual, a number of partners developed together to integration groundwater management into transboundary basin organizations in Africa. And this is really how to assist assessment and management and monitoring in transboundary conditions. What is then important, so it is to provide scientifically proven management and governance tools, measures, and instruments, and to deal with these situations. And the other guidelines which we have here is guidelines of transboundary aquifer assessment, and developed by UNESCO and IHP and IGRAC together. And last what I want to stress is availability and accessibility of information. And I'm giving just one example of Ramotswa aquifer in southern part of Africa, where also managing aquifer recharge is actually introduced. So availability, information, and transparency is extremely important. I would round off here and give floor to next speaker. Thank you.
Many thanks, Nedo, for having highlighting these different aspects, particular regarding information and data that are critical for the management of interconnectedness in between the groundwater system and surface water. Indeed, you can even consider this a layer complexity of managing this interaction to the already complex management of aquifers. And so for the next speaker, I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Chris Severin from the GEF International Waters, and he will base his intervention on, especially on the potential of conjunctive water management and as investment opportunity in transboundary projects. And okay, so welcome, Chris, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to all. Good to see so many familiar faces here. And you know, I still miss the times when we could meet up together, you know, in real physically. But we'll have to do for this for now, unfortunately. I don't have any slides. I'm just going to be speaking a little bit. You hear me well? Good, excellent, perfect. So I guess, I mean, we just heard the importance highlighted by all three speakers here of cooperation, basically between systems, and so let me talk a little bit about the GEF approach to this. I mean, it's familiar to many of the people online here, but let me just run through it anyway. So one of the trying to address the gap of data and basically also building trust between countries and between stakeholders. The GEF has for a very long time, since the very early stage, the first GEF 1 and even the pilot phase of the GEF, been working along building capacity through what we call a transboundary diagnostic analysis. So this is basically getting all the science right and getting, if possible, between different stakeholders in countries and also in between countries, getting the same data sets, or at least data that we can trust. So this is about the scientific rigor and basically building a scientific common understanding of what the issues are. And this pertains both to groundwater, surface water, and anything in between, all the different sectors that are interplaying here. And that then leads, so one thing is having a scientific understanding of where we are and what are the issues. Then the next level is then to bring it up to become a political instrument. And that's done through a prioritization process where the scientific information then, kind of leads the way to finding out what are the 5, 6, 10 priorities that needs to be addressed for ensuring the long-term environmental sustainability of this shared resource. That's what we call a strategic action program. That's then signed off eventually by ministers. So it goes from being a scientific prioritization exercise to become a political document that can then give direction long-term, hopefully, for 10, 15, 20 years down the road. That can also then be used to identify financing, because financing is important. And the GEF is a financial institution, correct? But we only have incremental financing. We can bring countries together. We can pay for this TASAP process, this scientific process for some of the basic demonstrations, but we don't have the funding, and we should not even fund full-scale implementation of these things. That's where we need national infrastructure financing. We need bilateral financing. We need multilateral financing. So the big banks, the Green Climate Fund, and so forth. That's where those sets of funding comes into play. Private sector, where applicable. In some of the cases just presented here, I mean, the private sector has a role to play, but it also we need to make sure that something as essential as water infrastructure is not, solely, it should not be privatized. I don't think, at least. I mean, and maybe that comes to play for me coming from Northern Europe. I do think that some of these services needs to be, borne by the public financing to the extent possible. But I mean, the private sector has a role to play, maybe as financiers, but also at least as a stakeholder in there. And it's important that we get that in when we build up these long-term frameworks for how the resource is going to be used. So keeping that in mind, I think that the short-term goal that we could have, and the short-term here, I think that's maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That's building the trust between countries and stakeholders and partners. I think that's the prime goal. If we can get out on the other end of an investment or a process, it doesn't have to be a big investment. It can just be a process. If we have trust between us to actually, to just pick up the phone or not put question marks on political statements or scientific statements, then we have gotten a long way. And that's the first step. And it's not only just the trivial first step. I still believe to this day that many of the things that happens around the world is simply a lack of trust that it eventually gets into being conflicts, and we don't want that on water, of course. Secondly, the medium-term goal here would be, building policy frameworks, formulating them, and having them adopted in countries. And this pertains a little to what we heard earlier, Mohammed say. That when we have, common management is fantastic. We have one ministry dealing both with groundwater and surface water, and even to streaming, but also getting into the ocean space. If we could get all those things managed in one place, that would be fantastic. The case reality is different, right? Many of the financial sectors that are active in water, in river basins, or in big basins, they're not managed the same place. Agricultural sector, energy sector, and so forth. They're all compartmentalized in different ministries. So it may not be possible. It's still a dream, and I share that with you, Mohammed. We should try to get into a place where we can have water resources managed in one institution. Then, of course, the next layer of complexity is when we get that into being between countries. So then we have different national management structures, and then we have to find out how we engage across these political boundaries. That's why I think having a strategic action program and even this transboundary diagnostic becomes so important, because even both nationally as well as internationally, if we cannot have the one structure to deal with all the management, if we can at least then have a common framework that we work with, and that's going to make it easier to have communication, in country as well as between countries, if we know we at least trying to work towards some of the same goals. And this of course is even more essential when we talk about groundwater that's not really visible, right? So we do need to have common framework structures for both capturing political momentum as well as harnessing financial investments for the short and long term. And of course, the long-term goal is to have environmental status change, I guess, both in groundwater and surface water, and in that space in between. This is the 20-25 year investment. That takes time. We can get there, but we just need to do it together. And I do think the way the GEF is working, we have shown that it's a fairly good system. There are many things that have been tried around the world, but this seems to be one of the few structures and processes that actually allow us for the long-term planning and getting to these long-term goals. Because water management is not 5 years, it's not 10 years, it's like 20 years, 25 years. That's when we start seeing the change. So we need to be in there for the long haul. The GEF will be in there for the long haul, and I think our partners need to be that, and we have shown that as well. So thank you so much. I really appreciate being able to speak here today.
Thank you very much, Chris, for this intervention. And in fact, I think, as you highlighted, there is a real need to base on the scientific information to clarify better what are all the benefits brought by conjunctive water management, to be able also to argue more for the business case of an investment for this range of techniques that we have discussed in the first session today. Mohammed, do you have any reaction to these comments from Chris, based on your experience and what you have explained at your first intervention? Very quickly, because we are running a little bit out of time. So please, a short intervention if you wish, Mohammed.
Yeah, Very quickly, just to tell Chris that what he said last is extremely important, because experience from what we have seen in governance improvement, including in Europe and so on, is that it takes time. Addressing governance issues to go back to the right management of groundwater, whether at national level or at transboundary level, takes really a lot of time, because it concerns institutions, it concerns correcting legal systems, it corrects a lot of negotiations and so on, as he inferred. So it does take a lot of time to address issues, and the best improvement we have seen have taken a minimum of 6 years. Thanks. We'll stop there for the time being.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. Raya, and in light of what has been discussed by the other panelists, and also a little bit the reflections that you brought before, do you want to have any conclusion?
No, thank you, Aurelia. Actually, I just want to say that the slide that Neno showed, where he showed the spring on one side, the aquifer, and then the border, is typically the case that is covered by the draft articles, because when it says the consideration of the recharge of the aquifer, so this is a really typical case, and we can imagine another case where it's the discharge, and the discharge would be a wetland, or the relationship between the river and the aquifer. And what he highlighted is the problem of the knowledge. That's why, for example, we can easily apply the draft articles and not the UN Convention, because the UN Convention really insists on the relationship. It has to exist to apply. Well, the draft article, they apply to the aquifer, and they give consideration to the surface water, even if the knowledge is still there. There is a precautionary approach in the draft articles that we cannot find in the one of the other instruments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raya. Neno, any further comment or complement based on this intervention?
I was talking enough. Thank you.
Okay, and last opportunity, Chris, as to the conclusion for this panel. Do you want to highlight any points?
Yeah, well, actually, the reason I was late to join this panel was there's another panel with the UNEC right now on financing on Nexus. So, I mean, in a perfect world, it seems that what we're doing here, this group, should be with the other group right now, because they're exactly more or less the same discussion, right? Of course, here we have more focused on the groundwater bit, but I mean, when we talk about Nexus, and to me, I guess to all of us, that includes the groundwater and should include the groundwater and all the economic sectors that are working. So they're dealing with the same issues where they're talking about the financing, of course, right now in this session. But I'm just saying luckily there's a lot of attention to this issue that is being dealt with in this meeting, and one that happens in Geneva right now. So it's not something that's going to go away. The GF will be continuing this approach. We'll be continuing these kind of investments. We are looking at a new GEF 8, a new replenishment fairly soon. And this has been part of the GEF replenishment since we've been doing investments in groundwater for the longest time. But specific wording on conjunctive management has been there since GEF 5. And so it will continue to be there. It's not going to go away. We still need to do this. I think we might even have to make it even more explicit. I mean, both the conjunctive part, but and the Nexus specifically, because it's not. If we try to do this in a silo, it's not going to work, right? So we do need to have it there. We will keep it there. It's imperative for us to be able to deliver anything on SDG 6.5 on transboundary water management. And if we are going to be able to assist countries in this, we do need to do it in this holistic approach. Otherwise, we will fail tremendously, and we'll get out to, then it's going to look like what the kind of investments that happened 50 years ago. We don't want that. We do need to make sure we get countries stronger and their resources are better managed. So with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to hear from the Sauromila Transboundary Basin. Thank you.
Of course, that's what I was going to mention, that now we will have very interesting also contribution and apply after the presentation that we had before this panel from James, another case of a project supported by the GEF, where even the title of the project, we can see there is a willingness to integrate both surface water and groundwater, because the project considers both an aquifer and surrounding river basins. So certainly, yes, Sebastian can take the floor now to make his presentation and complement what has been discussed in this panel, and explain to us how some of the reflections that he heard today can be useful for further developing the framework of for transboundary cooperation in the area of Ecuador and Peru for the Saramilla aquifer. So please, so Sebastian is the binational coordinator at the scale of the project, and so please, Sebastian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Aurélien. Could you please confirm if you can see the presentation?
Yes, perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
Give me 1 minute, please. Okay. Okay, it's a pleasure to participate in this event. Thanks for the invitation. During the project of integrated water management of transboundary water resource between Ecuador and Peru, we have developed an important study about the aquifer, the Sauromilla aquifer, that is located in this part, just in between the two countries. I'm going to put this at the point. This is the borderline. This is Ecuador. This is Peru, and all these areas is the aquifer, the Sauromilla aquifer. Initially, I will display the context in which this study has been developed. Then I am going to talk about the main results. Finally, the main challenge we have in this regard is how these are related to the conjunctive water management. Here we can see, first of all, objective of the project is strengthening the institutional, political, legal, and scientific and technical capacities to implement the integrated management of transboundary water resource in the three basins and aquifers of Huyango Tumbes, that is here, Catamayo Chira, and the last one, Sauromilla, is the smallest here. The International Water Project has been executed by the governments of Ecuador and Peru, by the UNDP, and of course, co-financing from the GEF. The project is in the final phase, which began in 2017 and will end in December of this year. One of the main components of the project was to develop the transboundary diagnostic analysis, the TDA, complemented with hydrological studies in this area. Although the Sauromilla basin is the smallest, we can see here, is nevertheless of the great importance for both countries, due to the fact that it is located in the transboundary aquifer of the same name. It is in the graphs in the right here, we can see the rainfall throughout the year. The rainy period and the dry period can be very, very marked. In the graph below, we can see, and this is related to the conjunctive water management, the water availability through surface waters and groundwater, the contribution of the groundwater here in the orange line, to supply for 8 months of the year the use on this area, without which it will not be possible to supply all the use in this area. mainly for agriculture, aquaculture, and the population use. In this photo, we can see the riverbed where there is clearly that not water in the drying months. In the annual balance, it is estimated that around 45% of the water comes from the aquifer and 53% comes from the surface waters and 2% from the transfer from a reservoir in another basin located in Ecuador. This region, it is also a region very susceptible of the effects of the Niño and also very vulnerable to the effects of the climate change, of course. Here, I am going to talk about the mainly results of the study. We have developed this study to the main objective of the study was to estimate the water availability of the Zarumilla Aquifer to provide information about the volume of water has been that is stored with that gain knowledge of how they achieve optimal and sustainable management of the available water resource. It's normal. The area of the basin is not the same as the area of the aquifer. The aquifer is bigger. We have almost 1,000 kilometers from the aquifer, and we have in this study. We have these studies developed in several phases with various activities such as review of previous studies, to develop or to carry primary information survey work, such as inventory of water wells, geophysical surveys, topographical works, evaluation of groundwater quality, and measurements of isometric levels. After that, we have developed a conceptual and numerical modeling of the aquifer. We have found a very important results. In this area, we can find there are 1,300 wells that have been inventoried. 5,000 it is located in the Ecuadorian territory, and 8,000 wells are in the Peruvian territory. It is estimated that there are at least an additional 15% of wells that we need to find to be inventoried. Most of the wells do not have exploitation or use permits. Also, with this study, we can find that in the Ecuador use 12 cubic hectometers per year, and Peru use 41 cubic hectometers from the aquifer. We have also the theoretical demand for water agricultural use in the Zarumilla Aquifer, and we have developed a new hydrological map for all this area that we can see in this picture. Yes. With the study, we have estimated the total reserve of water stored in the aquifer, and we have also found the exploitable water reserves according to the results of the water balance of the numerical model, where the volume of the aquifer is 2,000 cubic hectometers. So we use almost 5% of all the estimated reserves of the aquifer. As we can see during the preparation of this study, the relationship between surface water and groundwater is considered both demand and supply. The surface water was considered in the SWOT model in order to develop a hydrological model, then the mathematical model of the underground component, integrated analysis. The complete study of the aquifer we can find on a project website that is displayed here in the screen on the website of the Intergovernmental. Finally, I am going to talk about some challenges and the new steps that we have. In this sheet, we can see the challenge and the next steps for the management of the aquifer. At the beginning, we have the study of the aquifer that have been developed in the context of the project. Then we have a feasibility study that also we have developed a management model for the aquifer, a model that will be binational. This study has been made during the national strategic action plans. Also, a very important support is the government's commitment to continue with the joint integrated management of transboundary water. Finally, the cooperation that allows us to continue with the management. The study to develop the aquifer management model has given us the result that it will take about $2 million to carry it out in a period of 4 to 5 years, with components that range from generating information, developing a financial model for management, managing the risk of contamination or overexploitation of the aquifer, and promoting the formalization of the usage of the wells for irrigation currently. This institutional component of the governance of the aquifer is essential. In the case of Ecuador and Peru, there is an endorsement of support for the strategic action program for transboundary management. Currently, there is already a binational commission for the integrated management of water resources in Ecuador and Peru since 2017. In addition, institutions have implemented action to their countries. In the case of Peru, the National Water Authority it is implementing a project with the World Bank funds to improve knowledge of groundwater conditions in the north of the country. Finally, the governments continue to seek international cooperation that supports the management. The PIF is already being developed for the implementation of the strategic action program, in which several of the components identified in this first stage will develop those seeking sustainability of the actions. In the new process, due to the characteristics of the study of surface waters, the university must be involved, since there could be a true support so that the actions are long-term. And I think it is all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for this very interesting presentation. Muchas gracias. If anybody has a specific question to Sebastian, of course, you can write it in the question panel or in the chat. I think this presentation again highlighted the critical need for information and data with this very much needed characterization of the aquifers that has been undertaken and was just published for this aquifer, and also Sebastian, as you have rightly and nicely related this to also to the institutional setting, and in fact we had a question by Luciana that was posed in the question and answer panel with one, if I can maybe rephrase, once we know that the conjunctive water management approach can be interesting for a region, or what are the best tools for raising awareness at institutional level once expert knowledge indicate that this is indeed an opportunity that conjunctive water management brings benefits, especially for data scarce region. Do you have any answer regarding your project, Sebastian, for instance, you could provide to this question?
Here, how you have told us, it's very important to develop information to communicate to the decision makers all the issues about the aquifer management. So it is very, very important to develop that. So, and also it is important to develop institutional framework to where the institution can be together to discuss, to take decisions, to look for the information. Like that is very important to how to arrive to combine to the authorities about the really important issues that is really involved about that.
Thank you for this. And I took the opportunity that you were presenting to ask this question, which was indeed more general and that could be answered by other panelists and experts that intervened today. And in fact, it could be a nice transition also to, we had prepared a short poll, some questions to you, to all participants, to see a little bit your point of view in terms of priorities and what are the action to take to mainstream conjunctive water management into policy also. So please, Mahmoud, can you display the poll so that our participants a little bit indicate. So the first question, what is the type of conjunctive water management intervention that would have the most impact in your basin aquifer? Of course, depending of your function. If you're a project manager, this is relevant to you, but even if you are a researcher or working at national level, well, you can adapt the question to know a little bit what could be the type of approach that has more potential and more immediate impact. So we have it's in particular based on the framework developed in this new UNESCO presentation this new UNESCO publication, sorry, that Jack detailed in his presentation. So as I can see, only participants can vote, panelists cannot. You have this message, but well, of course, we want to learn from the participants. So, and you have also the option to select the above listed action at field level or really a mix of the two different level interpretations. And of course, if you think that conjunctive water management is not something that can bring benefits or that can bring additional benefits in terms of resilience or sustaining water services, of course, this possibly can be the case in some situation. But well, I don't know, maybe while I was explaining a little bit the question and describing it, I presume you have the time to vote. Mahmoud, I don't know if you have any indication of if all our participants could select one answer, or most of them, so that we can see the results.
Just one answer. It's just one answer.
Yes, it's just one answer. But yeah, I was explaining that some of the possible answers say that we can select, we can have the various answers, like the answer that says mostly all above listed action for field implementation. That would mean that you would identify as an opportunity the three types of field interventions. So can we show the results? Of course, so well, so the most selected answer was regarding a mix of all these tools. So indeed, the list of actions that are detailed in that was detailed in the presentation by Jack and presented in the UNESCO publication did want to raise awareness about several implementation, and as we know, water intervention for water resources management imply action at different levels. So it's good also that some participants identify the aspect of environmental control, which indeed also an aspect that is sometimes not so much taken into account when looking at conjunctive management from a more quantitative perspective. So, and again, you will have full definition and examples in the publication. So next question, we had another question which was maybe more related to the question we had by Luciana and this issue of promoting conjunctive water management. It was not plain before the question and posed by Luciana and this question. It was by chance that we had a similar consideration indeed. So well, this question would consider what type of action would help promoting conjunctive water management and prioritize conjunctive water management. So do we have already a set of techniques that are already ready to specific to immediate implementation, or do we look more as a priority at the institutional legal capacity or raising awareness as a priority option? Of course, all of this again, as a bit as the previous question, all answers certainly has many benefits, and the answer would be a mix of all these different possible actions. But here again, this would be like trying to select one priority among this proposition. So well, indeed, it's just more also for raising a little bit food for thought and like more different possible implication on this topic. So we can show the results. It's no need that everybody answers now, but at least with some. Okay, so yes, a nice participation. We have more than half our speakers of our participants answering. So indeed, techniques for immediate implementation doesn't seem to be like the way to go for now, as it seems that there is a more a need for increasing capacity and raising awareness. So, and then interestingly, also some participants selected one approach which is maybe more relevant at a transboundary level, which is in terms of benefit sharing, and so that maybe already tackles the financial and investment aspects, which is of course very necessary for any field intervention. So in fact, linking benefit sharing, which is relevant in transboundary level, and how we could mobilize investment and financing, could be indeed an option for conjunctive water management. Because if we linked conjunctive water management, for instance, with the concept of nature-based solution, as a little bit mentioned by Neno in the first session, we can link also this the promotion of conjunctive water management with a little bit all the current issues and different aspects of implementing nature-based solution. In particular, I think the need to characterize the benefits and to quantify what are really the benefits of my intervention. And I think that in terms of conjunctive water management, these techniques are most of them are quite mature and can already provide a quite good monitoring of what can be the benefit in terms of increased water availability or increasing water quality as compared to other nature-based solution, which can be much more uncertain to quantify the benefits. I'm thinking in particular for the managed aquifer recharge. Okay, so thanks to all to having answer to this question. As I said, it was also to a little bit develop a little bit a general understanding of what are different possibilities to implement better conjunctive water management. We are now at the end of this session, so we will not take much more of your time. Just maybe as you are connected today, I would like to show you quickly the new groundwater and conjunctive water management hub on the IW Learn website. This is where this webinar was announced, and where the main concept for conjunctive water management as developed in the publication were presented to have a first overview before the publication will be made available. But this space in IW Learn, so this portal is in fact okay, I think you can see it now. Is a place where we aim to compile all the experiences and results, actions, events regarding the actions of GEF International Water Project into for groundwater and conjunctive management. So of course you will have the main announcements, new publications, announce events. You have a series of resources that are there to have some background and to have a little bit the legacy of the past project, especially the GEF past project. We have also a list of the current and past projects that dealt with groundwater and conjunctive management. And so, for instance, yes, if you go to more projects, you have, of course, the list of projects. You have some documents, resources, and the most recent elements are presented in these highlights. So, for instance, this webinar of today and in resources, when the publication, new UNESCO publication will be available, you can access it also from there, in addition to the official UNESCO platforms. Well, more or less that's all. I invite you to communicate for the projects involved with the GEF, to communicate, of course, your experience and also needs. We had you can consult the experience and need assessment tool that we used at several occasions, and if you have any possibility to share these experiences or express your needs regarding conjunctive water management in the framework of your projects, you can, of course, contact us. So I will. You can, of course, explore this portal. So with this, I think we can finish this session of today. So I would like to thank again all the participants, and I hope and panelists, and I hope that the different concepts and different approaches that have been shared today will be somehow useful to explore new way of integrating integrative thinking of how groundwater and surface water interact, because this is really where conjunctive management want to focus. It is optimizing, of course, the use of different types of resources, but also looking at how enhancing the interactions of all these resources can create multiple benefits at multiple scale, which of course is very relevant in the transboundary context. And as for instance, as Chris explained, this is certainly a topic on which the GF is, among others, is going to continue investing in the coming years, and so there will be certainly other new developments in the coming weeks and months regarding this concept and how to apply it at a different level. So thank you very much again for the participation, and we look forward to you and to the interaction with you in the coming months. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.